The chamber is open and full of whispers.
Before we dive in, check the link in description if you want exclusive timelines, members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The first thing Harry Potter feels is the smallness, not darkness, not confusion, not the disorientation he might have expected from dying and waking somewhere he had already been. Just the smallness, his fingers curling against the thin mattress before his eyes open, and the fingers are wrong, short, soft. The fingers of someone who has never held a wand, never broken a nose, never gripped anything harder than a Muggle pencil. He has held a wand for most of a lifetime. He opens his eyes, the underside of a staircase, a slant of gray wood 6 inches above his face, the smell of dust and old shoes and the particular damp that lives inside walls that no one bothers to heat, a thin blanket, a mattress that is not quite long enough, though his body is not yet long enough to notice. He is 5 years old. He knows this the way he knows his own name. He also knows that Hermione Granger is alive somewhere across London, waking into the same wrong smallness, in a warm house that smells nothing like this one, and that she will already be sitting up and cataloging her situation with a systematic efficiency he spent years finding both invaluable and, occasionally, infuriating. She will be on the second or third item of her list before he has finished registering where his feet are. His feet are at the wrong end of his legs. His legs are very short. He breathes once through the nose. Then again, the scar burns. Not the white-hot scream he remembers from Voldemort at full strength. Not the shriek of it that used to bend him double over desks at Hogwarts. This is lower, slower, persistent, like a coal pressed just beneath the skin, generating heat without light. He has been 5 years old for approximately 40 seconds, and he is already carrying a piece of someone else's soul in his forehead. He closes his eyes again. He brings his breathing down deliberately, the way Hermione taught him to, the way Snape had tried to teach him and failed because Harry had been too angry to listen, until he wasn't angry anymore, which took longer than it should have. One breath in, hold it in the chest, let it out. His chest is very small, the grief of that, not the cupboard, not the staircase, not the particular cruelty of being back in this house, but the specific bodily grief of a mind that knows exactly what it can do, and a body that does not yet have the architecture to do it, settles into him like water finding the lowest point of a stone. He does not fight it. Fighting it produces accidental magic, and accidental magic at 3:17 in the morning produces a letter from the ministry, and that is not how he wants to begin. He feels it fully. The smallness, the wrongness, the weight of everything he is carrying in a body that weighs just under 40 pounds. Then he turns his attention inward and begins to build the cage. It takes 11 minutes. The mental architecture is the hardest part, not because the technique is beyond him, but because the mind he is working with is partly 5 years old, and the parts that are 5 years old keep sliding away from the structure, soft and unformed, refusing to hold the shape of what he is trying to build. He has to work around them, find the parts that are still his, the adult discipline, the years of occlumency lessons learned first badly, and then, after he stopped being afraid of what Snape would see, reasonably well, and anchor the barrier to those. He builds the outer wall first. He imagines it as stone, though the specific material is not important, only the weight of the intention behind it. He builds it around the scar, not over it. Around it, a circle, closed, sealed at every seam. Then the second wall inside the first, and between the walls, nothing. Silence. The specific magical silence that means nothing passes here, nothing comes in, nothing goes out. When the second wall locks into place, the coal in his forehead goes cold. He lies in the dark and breathes and feels the absence where the burning was. The soul shard is still there. He can feel the shape of it, the way you can feel a stone in your shoe even through the leather. But it is contained, dormant. It does not know it has been walled in. It breathes in its prison like a fire that cannot feel the stone around it. 11 minutes, in the dark, in the cupboard under the stairs, at age 5. He will not be better at this for a while. He will not have more practice. This will have to be sufficient, and it is. He opens his eyes again. Somewhere in Hackney he knows Hermione's already on the problem of the P.O. box. He does not know this through any magical connection. He knows it because he has known her for most of a lifetime, through grief and war, and the particular intimacy of being the only two people in the world who understood what the other was carrying, and she is the most systematically efficient person he has ever met. She will have the contact protocol designed before dawn. She will have the cipher derived from rune-based codes by the end of the week. She will have identified the Islington Library as the meeting point, midway between Privet Drive and Hackney, accessible by public transport, open to children, sufficiently anonymous, and she will be there in 3 weeks with a list. He is not alone. This is the difference. This is the thing that was not true the first time. He says it to the underside of the staircase, not aloud, just inside, where the cage is, where the coal used to be. He is not alone. He says it until it feels like a fact instead of a thing he needs to convince himself of. Then he begins his list. Sirius Black is in Azkaban. He has been there for 4 years. He will die there, slowly and by degrees, unless someone moves fast enough. Harry puts him first, not because of strategy, though there is strategy there. There is always strategy. Sirius freed is an ally, a black heir, a seat in the Wisengamot, a legal lever against half the network they need to dismantle. But because Sirius is first, simply because he is Sirius, and he has been in that cell for 4 years, and he does not deserve one more day of it. Harry gives himself 30 seconds to feel that. It is not a small feeling. He lets it exist fully without managing it, and then he files it. Grief acknowledged, grief stored, grief converted to operational priority. The diary is with Lucius Malfoy. The locket is in the cave. The ring is buried under the gaunt shack. The cup is in the Lestrange vault at Gringotts. The diadem is in the room of requirement, waiting in a pile of junk behind a broken cabinet that no one thinks to look at. He is in the cupboard, carrying the 7th, and the 7th is the most complicated problem on the list, and he is not ready to solve it yet, and that is acceptable. He has time. He has so much time. He thinks about Remus Lupin, who is 25 years old right now, and still trying to convince himself he deserves to occupy a room. He thinks about Fred Weasley, 11 years old and laughing somewhere in the burrow, 11 full years ahead of him that he does not know he has. He thinks about Dumbledore at Hogwarts, carrying a plan Harry spent years learning the full shape of, a plan that ends with a boy walking into a forest, and Harry thinks, with a coldness that surprises him even now, not this time. Not this time, and not because of destiny or prophecy or the particular cruelty of a war that asks children to die, but because there is another way, and he knows exactly what it is, and he is going to do it, and it will work. He is 5 years old. He is the most dangerous thing in this country. He checks the cage one final time. The walls are solid. The scar is silent. The soul shard sits inside its stone, breathing, unknowing, waiting for a Voldemort who no longer has access to it, who will reach for the connection that should exist and find nothing there, only cold, only wall, only the specific silence of a door that has been closed and locked from the inside by a 5-year-old child who knows exactly what he is doing. He pulls the thin blanket up to his chin. The mattress is inadequate. The ceiling is too close. The space smells of other people's things, and outside the cupboard door, Vernon Dursley is snoring with the reliable rhythm of a man who has never once considered that he might be wrong about something. None of this matters. The cage is built. The list is made. In 3 weeks, there is a library in Islington, and Hermione will be there, and they will sit across from each other for the first time in this life, and they will begin. Harry Potter closes his eyes. The scar does not burn. He sleeps. The first letter arrives at the P.O. box on a Tuesday. Harry has checked it every day for 9 days, which involves a bus from the stop near the end of Magnolia Crescent, a transfer at the High Street, and 45 minutes of looking out a window at the particular gray-green of an English August, while sitting very still and appearing to be a small child on a day trip. The Dursleys believe he is at Mrs. Figg's. Mrs. Figg believes he is playing quietly in her back garden. He is, in fact, on a bus. The letter is 3 pages, handwritten, in a cipher that takes him 4 minutes to break, because she has used a modified Elder Futhark substitution, his first clue, layered over a Polybius square. His second, and the key, is the specific sequence of runes carved above the Hogwarts Great Hall entrance, which only one of them would know to use, and which no ministry analyst in 1985 has any chance of identifying as anything other than a child's elaborate game. He reads it twice on the bus home. It says, "I've found a library with a quiet room on the 2nd floor. The librarian is named Mrs. Okafor, and she doesn't ask children what they're reading. Saturday the 17th, 10 in the morning. Bring your list." At the bottom, in smaller letters, below the cipher, "I cried twice yesterday. I am telling you so that you know, and so that I don't have to tell you again." He folds the letter back into his pocket. He looks out the window at the gray-green August. He understands exactly what she means. She is already there when he arrives. Second floor, quiet room, the table in the far corner by the window where the light comes in at an angle and the shelves block the sidelines from the door. She has arranged 2 chairs so they are side by side rather than across, because a cross is for strangers and they have never been strangers. She looks like Hermione. She is 6 years old, and she looks like Hermione in the way that a sketch looks like the finished painting. The outline's correct, the detail still becoming itself. The hair is already extraordinary. The eyes are exactly right. Harry sits down next to her. She says, "You're shorter than I expected." He says, "You have a lot of nerve." She looks at him for a long moment. Then she smiles. And it is the right smile, the specific one, the one she kept for moments when things were worse than either of them wanted to admit, and she refused to let them be, and something in his chest that has been very tightly held since 317 on July 31st releases by about 3 degrees. He puts his list on the table. She puts hers on the table. They are not identical, but they are close. Close enough that they spend the first 20 minutes simply comparing and noting the differences, speaking quietly, appearing to any observer as 2 children doing homework, which they are not, which is the point. "Sirius first," she says. Not as a question. "Sirius first," he confirms. "We'll need Gringotts access before we can do it properly. That's the step before Sirius, which makes Gringotts the step before everything." She nods. She writes something in a notebook with a ladybird on the cover, which is the correct notebook for a 6-year-old in a library, and is therefore exactly what she would choose. "I've started on the gobbledygook. There's a pre-statute linguistics text at the British Library that my mother took me to see. I told her I wanted to look at illuminated manuscripts." She pauses. She was very pleased. She thinks I'm interested in art history. "Are you?" "The art history is a side effect," she writes another line. "I'll need 18 months to reach conversational competency at a level Ragnar's team would respect. You'll need 12 because you have better auditory memory and I have better reading comprehension. And we can share notes." He has missed her specific, calibrated confidence more than he has words for, and he does not say this because she knows, because she said I cried twice yesterday, and I am telling you so that you don't have to ask again, which means the same thing in reverse, which means they are still fluent in each other. "All right," Harry says. 18 months. Then Gringotts, she agrees. Then Sirius. The meetings happen twice a year. The letters happen every 2 weeks. They are, between the meetings and the letters, separately and simultaneously the most industrious children in the United Kingdom. Hermione acquires, over the course of 1985 and 1986, 3 pre-statute magical history texts from the British Library's restricted folklore archive, accessed through her parents who access them through a university contact, who has no idea what he is enabling. A water-damaged copy of a pre-ministry arithmancy primer from a second-hand academic bookshop in Bloomsbury. A partial translation of Secrets of the Darkest Art, specifically the chapters on soul anchoring, which she reads once and annotates in a second cipher, and then puts away in the locked box under her bed and does not take out again until she needs it. She also learns to ride a bicycle, practices the piano at her mother's request, and reads every Muggle children's book in the Hackney library system. This last one is not strategic. She simply wants to read them. She had not been a child in a very long time. Harry practices the emotional forgery. This is the harder discipline. Hermione has books and notation and the capacity to sit still and work through a problem systematically until it yields. Harry has the Dursley household and his own neurological state and the specific challenge of performing precise wandless magic in under 0.3 of a second while internally generating a response that reads, to any monitoring system, as the uncontrolled emotional spike of a frightened child. The first 20 attempts produce nothing useful. The magic fires, but the emotional signature is wrong. Too controlled, too brief, the profile of someone suppressing rather than someone overwhelmed. He knows this because nothing explodes when it should. The trace needs to read chaos. He is producing something that reads as restraint, and restraint in a 5-year-old registers as anomalous in a different way. He sits in the cupboard after the 20th attempt and thinks about the problem. He is not frustrated. Frustration is not useful. He examines the mechanism instead. Genuine child fear produces a sustained cortisol response, not a spike, not a point of heat. He has been trying to produce the spike. He should be producing the sustained response first and letting the magic follow it, not the other way around. He tries again. He thinks about Sirius and Azkaban, genuinely, without the cage, without management. He lets it exist, the full image of it, the cold and the dark and the dementors overhead, and Sirius shrinking by degrees, and from inside that sustained, genuine physical response, he performs one precise act. He moves a pencil 4 inches to the left. The trace registers. The Ministry sends a standard underage monitoring notice to the file marked Potter H. Privet Drive, Surrey. The pencil is 4 inches to the left. Nothing explodes. No one comes. He writes to Hermione that night, "I've solved the forgery problem." The emotional state has to be real. The magic rides it rather than generates it. Limit still holds. 2 per day maximum before it starts showing in the face. Her response arrives 4 days later. "I thought you'd solve it this way. I've been solving it differently. I produced the cortisol response through a breathing exercise derived from the occlumency inversion technique. It's more efficient but requires 12 seconds of setup. Your version is faster but more costly. Between us, we have 2 methods. I'm adding this to the operational document. There is always an operational document. He has come to understand this as a fixed property of the universe, like gravity, like the boiling point of water, like the fact that Hermione Granger will have an operational document for every contingency, whether or not anyone has asked for one. He finds it, every time, an extraordinary comfort. September 1987. The quiet room. The table by the window. She opens the Ladybird notebook to a page near the back. She turns it to face him. It is a timeline, drawn in the fine, precise hand she has been practicing for 2 years, annotated in the modified cipher, running from July 1985 to what the label at the far right reads, in plain text, as resolution. Every node has a date. Every node has a dependency mapped in blue ink beneath it. Every dependency is accounted for. Harry reads it from left to right. He reads it again. They are, by the accounting of this document, 11 weeks ahead of the most optimistic version of the schedule he had carried in his head since the cupboard. The gobbledygook work is complete. The Gringotts preparation is complete. The Horcrux location data is documented. The Sirius strategy is outlined through to its legal conclusion, and cross-referenced against 3 Wisengamot precedents Hermione found in a pre-ministry governance text that cost her £4.50 at a remainder sale. They are 7 years old. They have been 7 for, between them, a combined total of about 4 months. The document is 31 pages. "We're ready," she says, not triumphant. Factual, in the way she states all facts, as though the universe would be embarrassed to contradict her. Harry looks at the timeline for a moment longer. He looks at the node marked Gringotts and the node marked Sirius, and the long chain of dependencies stretching beyond them towards something that still takes his breath slightly if he looks at it directly. "We're ready," he agrees. She closes the notebook. She puts it in her bag, next to the arithmancy primer and the library card for a name that is not quite hers, but is close enough. Outside the window, Islington goes about its ordinary Saturday entirely without awareness of what has just been decided in a quiet room on the 2nd floor. Harry buys them both a packet of biscuits from the vending machine on the way out. He has always bought both. They take the number 19 bus from King's Cross. Hermione's mother drops them at the station at 9:30, believing they are going to the Natural History Museum with a school group that does not exist. Hermione spent 3 weeks constructing this particular cover story, cross-referencing the museum's actual school program schedule, so the details would hold under any level of parental inquiry. Her mother says, "Have a wonderful time, sweetheart," and waves from the car window, and Hermione waves back until the car turns the corner. Then she adjusts the strap of her bag, which contains the operational document, 2 blank sheets of parchment, a gobbledygook pronunciation guide written in her 2nd cipher, and a small tin of mints that are not mints. "Ready," she says. "Ready," Harry says. They take the number 19 bus. Tom, the innkeeper of the Leaky Cauldron, is a small man with a wide face and more teeth than seems strictly necessary, and he has worked his particular door for 30 years. And in 30 years he has never had 2 7-year-olds walk in off Charing Cross Road and ask to be let through to Diagon Alley. He looks at them over the bar. He looks specifically at the boy, at the dark hair and the green eyes, and the lightning scar just visible at the hairline, and his wide face does something complicated. Harry says, in carefully measured gobbledygook, Gringot Ranrock, Kleindar Ragnacher, Klesh Warak. I would prefer not to make a scene. The 3rd sentence is not, strictly, in the pre-statute linguistics text. Hermione translated it from First Principles last week, specifically for this moment. She has a talent for First Principles. Tom stares at him for 4 full seconds. Then he slides off his stool, leads them to the back courtyard without a word, taps the bricks in the correct sequence, and says absolutely nothing to anyone about what he has just seen, which is the correct response, and the one Harry calculated on. The wall opens. Diagon Alley moves beyond it, busy and gold in the October light. They walk to Gringotts without stopping. Harry keeps his eyes forward. Several witches and wizards glance at him as they pass. That particular glance, the double take, the widening, the almost reach towards someone nearby to confirm what they are seeing. He does not acknowledge any of them. He is 7 years old, and he is here for one reason, and the reason is not to be looked at. Ragnarok is not the goblin at the front counter. The entrance hall goblin, young, sharp-eyed, already visibly unsettled by 2 children who have walked in and proceeded directly to the front without gawking at the ceiling, requires 3 minutes of conversation and 1 further sentence of gobbledygook before he disappears through a side door. He returns with an expression that suggests he is repeating words he has never assembled in this order before. Senior Account Manager Ragnarok will see you. The office is stone, windowless, lit by something that is not quite firelight and not quite cold. Ledgers on every surface, stacked with the specific precision of systems that have been running longer than anyone in the Ministry of Magic has been alive. The desk is designed for a goblin, which means it sits at almost exactly the right height for 2 children standing in front of it. Ragnarok is old, not elderly, old in the way that stone is old, his face holding the geography of someone who has been assessing situations for longer than most wizarding governments have lasted. His eyes move across them both with the quality of a scale, not unkind, ruthlessly accurate. He says, in English, "You requested a blood assessment meeting." "We did," Harry says. "Thank you for accommodating us." A pause. Ragnarok's eyes move to Hermione, who stands slightly to Harry's left with her hands folded and her expression pleasant and precisely neutral. Then back to Harry. "You are Harry Potter," Ragnarok says. "Yes, you are 7 years old, 7 and 2 months. The blood assessment meeting is a formal proceeding under Goblin banking law. It is not a curiosity exercise. It is not a consultation. Do you understand what you are requesting?" Harry says, "I am requesting a biometric assessment of my blood claim to the Potter accounts. I am requesting formal recognition of demonstrated competency on the declared adult provision of the Maker's Right Code, subsection 14, which allows a being of any biological age to be assessed as an adult in the eyes of Goblin law upon demonstration of sufficient competency in 3 areas: knowledge, power, and precision." He pauses 1 beat. "I know the provision exists because it appears in the pre-statute governance text of 1689, held in the British Library's Folklore Archive. I know it applies to non-goblins because the 1712 amendment extended it to any being transacting under goblin jurisdiction. I would like to proceed." Ragnarok looks at him. He opens his ledger. "Knowledge first," he says. "Tell me the contents of Trust Vault 687 as of this morning. The specific sum, broken down by denomination, the 3 items of non-monetary value in the secondary compartment, a pocket watch with a cracked face, a bundle of letters in Lily Potter's handwriting, and a child's toy broomstick that had belonged to James." He knows the pocket watch because Dumbledore mentioned it once, in a conversation Harry was not intended to hear. He knows the letters because Hermione located a Gringotts vault inventory in the pre-statute archive and cross-referenced it against the Wisengamot probate filing from November 1981. He knows the toy broomstick because James Potter's first-year Hogwarts records listed it as a declared personal item, and the inventory notes it passed to the trust upon his death. Ragnarok makes a mark in his ledger. He does not look up when he says, "Correct on all counts." He places a single galleon on the edge of the desk. "Power," he says. "Move it." Harry moves it. No gesture. No flourish. He looks at the coin and it slides 4 inches across the stone surface in a perfectly straight line and stops exactly at the desk's far edge. Beneath the motion, inside his chest, he holds the full image of Sirius in Azkaban. The cold, the dark, the slow diminishment of a man who does not deserve to be there and lets the genuine physiological response run beneath the wandless act like water running under ice. To any monitoring instruments Ragnarok has, the emotional signature reads as an uncontrolled child's spike. To Harry's hands, it is a measurement. To the coin, it is simply a fact. Ragnarok looks at the coin. He looks at Harry. He makes another mark. "Precision," he says. He places a second galleon touching the first. "Move the first. Do not move the second." Harry moves the first. The second does not move. The room is quiet for a moment. Not uncomfortable, simply precise, which appears to be the quality Ragnarok values above all others. Your gobbledygook, Ragnarok says. Not a question. Harry speaks 3 sentences. His accent is not native. The phonology requires a palate shaped differently. But the grammar is formally correct, the register appropriate, and the 3rd sentence says, I understand that a debt recorded is a debt remembered, and I do not come here to borrow. I come here to deposit. Ragnarok closes his ledger. He looks at Harry, then at Hermione, who has not spoken once, and has therefore communicated with perfect clarity everything Ragnarok needs to know about how these two operate. The declared adult provision, Ragnarok says, has been invoked 4 times in the history of this bank, twice by goblins under the age of maturity, once by a centaur in 1743, once by a wizard in 1801 who was subsequently found to have memorized the required responses rather than understood them. That account was closed. He opens a different ledger. He writes in it briefly with a quill that scratches across the page in a manner that suggests permanence. You have demonstrated knowledge, power, and precision, he says. The biometric assessment will confirm your blood claim. You will be granted access to Trust Vault 687 today. Full access to the Potter family vault requires a secondary assessment at age 10, which I will schedule now. He looks up. The declared adult designation does not extend to the Ministry of Magic, who are not consulted in these matters and will not be informed. Understood, Harry says. There is one additional matter. Ragnarok waits. I have reason to believe that a specific vault in this bank contains an object of dark origin, not merely cursed, but fundamentally corrupted in a manner that constitutes a contamination risk under Gringotts' internal safety provisions. Section 7, Paragraph 3. Hazardous magical objects posing structural or ambient risk to adjacent vault integrity. Harry places a folded sheet of parchment on the desk. Hermione's handwriting, the relevant safety provision cited with full reference numbers. The vault number is not written, it is spoken aloud, in gobbledygook, so it exists in no ministry-accessible written record. I am formally requesting that your office initiate an internal audit, not on my behalf. On the bank's behalf, the object poses a compounding risk over an extended period, and I believe a senior accounts review would confirm this independently. Ragnarok picks up the parchment. He reads it fully, which takes longer than Harry expected, which means he is reading it more than once. He sets it down. For the first time since they entered the room, something crosses his face that is not the scale. It is something older and considerably more interested. This, Ragnarok says carefully, will take time. I know, Harry says. I have time. Ragnarok looks at him, at the 7-year-old standing in front of a goblin's desk, who came in off the street and spoke correct gobbledygook, and moved a coin with surgical precision and cited subsection 14 of the Maker's Right Code, and has now formally initiated a dark object audit on a vault belonging to a family of convicted Death Eaters, without raising his voice, his wand, or his age as either advantage or excuse. He adds one final line to the ledger. He blots it. Your vault key will be ready in 15 minutes, Ragnarok says. The audit will proceed at the bank's discretion and timeline. You will be notified through this office when findings are confirmed. Thank you, Harry says. He means it in the specific way of someone who has been planning this meeting for 2 years and has just watched the first domino commit itself to falling. Outside, in the marble entrance hall, the chandeliers throw cold light across the floor in long, pale bars. Hermione falls into step beside him without breaking stride. After 3 steps, she says, quietly, subsection 14, You found it, Harry says. I just used it. She is quiet for 2 more steps. Then, the audit will take years. It resolves in Chapter 9, he says, which is their shorthand. Not chapters, not really, but the habit of treating the future as a document they have already read and are now simply navigating. Ragnarok's team will get there. The cup will be flagged, assessed, and destroyed through official goblin process, without Harry or Hermione touching it directly, without ministry involvement, without anyone understanding what the object truly was until it is already gone. They collect the vault key from a junior goblin who cannot quite meet either of their eyes and descend. The vault smells of old stone and cold gold and something that is faintly, distantly, his parents'. Harry picks up the pocket watch with the cracked face. He holds it for a moment without speaking. He reads the time it stopped, which is a time that does not need to be examined further today. He sets it back down. They ascend. They walk back through Diagon Alley. This time people step aside, staring openly. a child who is dead walking calmly in morning light, and through the leaky cauldron where Tom is looking extremely hard at a glass he is polishing, and out onto Charing Cross Road. They take the number 19 bus back to King's Cross. Hermione's mother is waiting. "How is the museum?" she asks. "Excellent," Hermione says. "We learned a great deal." The petition is 43 pages. Hermione wrote the first draft in 6 days. Harry read it, made 11 annotations, and she incorporated 9 of them. The remaining 2 she disagreed with on structural grounds and explained why, in the margins in her second cipher, in handwriting that has grown precise enough to be mistaken for an adult's. She was right about both, he told her so. They sit across from Ragnok on a Tuesday morning in March, and Ragnok reads it. He reads all 43 pages. He takes 37 minutes. At no point does he look up. When he finishes, he sets it on his desk with the particular care of someone handling something that has mass beyond its physical weight, and he says, "Sirius Black was imprisoned in November 1981. Without verite serum questioning, without a formal charge sheet filed with the Wisengamot clerk's office, we requested the filing records under the Goblin Sovereignty Accords, Section 11, which grants Gringotts legal services access to Wisengamot procedural records when a client's assets are involved. The Black family vault has been in administrative suspension since Sirius's imprisonment. That suspension requires a valid conviction to stand. There is no valid conviction because there was no trial." Ragnok looks at him. "You are 8 years old. The petition isn't," Harry says. A pause. Ragnok picks up the petition again and turns to page 31, which is the section Hermione considers her best work. A sequential breakdown of every Wisengamot procedural requirement for imprisoning a member of an ancient and noble house, cross-referenced against the documented record of what actually occurred in November 1981, which is, Bartemius Crouch Sr. signed a detention order, and Sirius Black went to Azkaban, and those 2 facts exist in a legal vacuum so total that it takes a page and a half just to catalog the absences. If this is filed, Ragnok says, it cannot be unfiled. The Wisengamot will be required to act. "Yes," Harry says. "That's the point." Ragnok sets the petition down a second time. He opens his ledger, the permanent one, the one that scratches permanence into every line, and he writes, and he blots, and he looks up. Gringotts Legal Services will file this petition on behalf of Harry James Potter, declared adult account holder, in the matter of the unlawful administrative detention of Sirius Black. He pauses. "We will require 2 weeks for internal review and gobbledygook translation of the procedural citations." 2 weeks is acceptable, Harry says. Hermione, who has not spoken once, writes something in the Ladybird notebook. She closes it. She looks at the wall behind Ragnok's head with an expression of complete composure. Harry knows that expression. She is, behind it, doing something extremely complicated with her breathing. So is he. The petition arrives at the Wisengamot clerk's office on a Thursday. By the following Monday, it is on Amelia Bones's desk. Harry knows this because Ragnok's contact in the clerk's office, a half-goblin administrative assistant who has worked there for 11 years, and has a very specific arrangement with Gringotts involving certain favorable exchange rates, sends confirmation through the bank's internal courier system. The confirmation is one line, received. Director Bones, DMLE. Harry reads it in the Islington Library on a Saturday afternoon. He shows it to Hermione. She reads it. She puts it in her bag. She says, "Now we wait." "Now we wait," he agrees. They wait for 6 weeks. In those 6 weeks, Hermione begins her preliminary study of soul anchor ward theory, which will not be useful for 4 years, but which she intends to have mastered in 3. Harry practices the forgery technique until he can sustain it for 90 seconds without the physiological toll appearing in his face, which Hermione tests by watching him very carefully and telling him when he looks wrong. He looks wrong 4 times. Then he does not look wrong again. They are 8 and 9 years old. They do this in a public library in Islington, while the librarian Mrs. Okafor occasionally brings them biscuits and calls them her readers. The Wisengamot summons Sirius Black for a formal hearing on the 15th of June, 1989. He has been in Azkaban for 7 years, 7 months, and 14 days. Harry is not in the chamber when it happens. Neither is Hermione. Children are not permitted in closed Wisengamot hearings, and they have no interest in overreaching the moment. The petition has already done its work. Ragnok's legal advocate, a goblin named Sharpclaw, who speaks 4 languages and has a documented record of winning procedural cases against the Ministry going back to 1943, presents the procedural argument. Amelia Bones, who has been quietly furious about this particular administrative failure for 7 years and who needed only a legally airtight petition to act, presides. Sirius is given Veritaserum for the first time since his arrest, which is to say, for the first time at all. He answers 11 questions. The hearing lasts 4 hours. The deliberation lasts 40 minutes. The verdict is not a verdict in the traditional sense. There was no trial to overturn. It is a determination that the detention order signed by Bartemius Crouch Sr. in November 1981 was procedurally invalid, that no lawful conviction exists, and that the continued imprisonment of Sirius Black constitutes unlawful detention under Wisengamot Charter Article 9. Sirius Black is released from Azkaban on the 17th of June, 1989, at 11:04 in the morning. He has been there for 7 years, 7 months, and 16 days. The room is at St. Mungo's, 4th floor, long-term recovery ward, a private room that Ragnarok's office has arranged through a charitable allocation that the Black family vault, now unfrozen, funds without difficulty. It smells of antiseptic and old stone, and the specific sterile warmth of a space that is trying to be kind. Sirius is sitting up in the bed when Harry comes in. He looks like Sirius. He looks like Sirius the way a negative looks like a photograph. The shape's correct, the light inverted. 7 years of Dementors have taken the color from him, the weight, the particular brightness that Harry remembers from the other life. His hands on the blanket are thin. His eyes, which should be silver gray and sharp, are silver gray and very tired. He looks at Harry. He looks for a long time. "You're small," Sirius says. Finally. "I'm 8, Harry says. "You're the reason I'm out." "Ragnarok's legal team is the reason you're out. I just wrote the argument." Sirius makes a sound that is not quite a laugh. It is something trying to remember how to be a laugh, working on it, not quite there yet. James would have said that too. Exactly like that. He stops. His face does something that he does not try to hide, and Harry lets it happen without looking away, because Sirius has earned the right to have his face do whatever it needs to do in this room. "Where's your partner?" The petition had 2 sets of annotations. "Waiting outside. She thought this should be just us first. Smart girl." Terrifyingly, Harry agrees. There is a tray on the bedside table. Tea cooling. Toast that nobody has touched. The healer has left it with the specific optimism of medical staff who know that eating is important, and who are not always sure they can communicate this to the patient. Sirius is looking at him with an expression Harry cannot fully read, which is new. There was a version of this man he knew very well, and this version is an earlier draft, hollowed by 7 years of cold, and Harry does not know all of it yet. He will learn it. He has time. He has built the time deliberately, on a schedule, for exactly this reason. He is 8 years old and he has freed his godfather 11 years ahead of schedule, and there is a great deal to say, and none of it should happen in the next 4 minutes. Harry picks up the cooling cup of tea. He holds it out. "Drink the tea first," he says. "Everything else after." Sirius looks at the cup. He looks at Harry. Something in his face shifts. Not understanding, not yet, but the beginning of it. The first layer of recognition that this child is not going to explain himself in this room today. That the explanation is a longer conversation for when Sirius is warm and fed and has slept somewhere without Dementors overhead. He takes the cup. He drinks the tea. "All right," he says quietly. "All right. What's after the tea?" "Sleep," Harry says. "Then food. Then, when you're ready. And there's no rush, we have time, we have more time than you know. Hermione comes in and we show you what's next." His hands are steadier now that they have something to hold. "You have a plan," he says. "We have several." "Of course you do." A pause. "You're 8. The plan doesn't care how old I am," Harry says. "Neither does the work, neither does Ragnarok, and neither will you, once you've slept." Sirius is quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, London does what London does. Continues indifferently, going about its ordinary Tuesday in June, entirely unaware that a man who should have died in this city is sitting up in a bed in St. Mungo's with a cup of tea, alive and free and incrementally returning to himself. "Stay," Sirius says. Not a question, not an order. Just the particular word of someone who has been in a room alone for 7 years and 7 months and 16 days, Harry sits in the chair beside the bed. He stays. The compartment smells of pumpkin pasties and somebody's owl. Harry sits by the window and watches the countryside become less certain of itself. The suburbs giving way to fields, the fields to moor, the moor to something older and less named. Hermione is reading. This is not unusual. What is slightly unusual is that she is reading a first-year charms textbook she has already read 4 times, holding it at the correct angle for a child encountering it for the first time, turning pages at the pace of someone learning rather than reviewing. She is practicing looking like a student. They both are. The boy who falls into their compartment looking for a seat is Ronald Weasley, 11 years old, red-haired, good-natured, and deeply curious about Harry in the particular way of someone who has grown up with Harry Potter as a story rather than a person. Harry has prepared for this. He is pleasant, he is genuine, he deflects the fame with the ease of someone who has deflected it before. And by the time the sweets trolley comes around, Ron is talking about his brothers with the unself-conscious warmth of a person who has never once worried about being too much for a room. Harry finds he likes him immediately. He liked him the first time, too. When Draco Malfoy appears in the doorway with Crabbe and Goyle arranged behind him like an architectural feature, Harry looks at him for a moment with the patient attention of someone assessing a piece of furniture they have already decided not to purchase, and says, pleasantly, "No thank you," and the conversation ends. Malfoy leaves. Ron stares at the closed compartment door for a full 3 seconds. Then he says, "That was brilliant," and Harry says, "It wasn't difficult," and Hermione looks up from her book with an expression that means she is not saying something, which is one of her most informative expressions. The train continues north. The landscape gets darker and more serious, as landscapes in Scotland tend to, and the first years change into their robes, and Harry looks out the window at a country he has spent 6 years preparing to re-enter, and feels, beneath the preparation and the planning and the long operational calm, something small and genuine that he does not examine closely. He is going back. That is all, he is going back. The boats cross the lake in darkness. The castle rises. Harry has studied the architectural plans, he has read Hogwarts, a history in 3 editions, and cross-referenced the discrepancies. He knows the depth of the lake, the species of the giant squid, the specific magical frequency of the warming charms on the entrance hall floor, because Hermione found a pre-statute magical architecture text in 1988, and they spent a long weekend going through it. None of this, it turns out, accounts for seeing it. It comes out of the dark above the water the way it always does. Not gradually, not politely, but all at once, as if it has been there the whole time and has simply decided to stop being modest about it. 1,000 years of stone and magic and history, lit from within, hanging above the lake with the specific arrogance of something that knows what it is. Hermione, in the boat beside him, says nothing. He says nothing. For approximately 6 seconds they are simply 2 11-year-olds on a lake at night, looking at something extraordinary, and the careful adult machinery of the last 6 years is quiet, and that is sufficient. Then Hermione straightens up and says, very quietly so only he can hear, "The ward structure on the East Tower has been reconfigured since the 1689 text. The resonance is different." "I noticed," he says. "Something to investigate." "Something to investigate," he agrees. The boats touch shore. Professor McGonagall explains the houses. The first year stand in an anteroom that Harry has stood in before, looking at her over the heads of children who have never seen a ghost float through a ceiling, some of whom are now having strong feelings about this. Harry and Hermione observe the ghost, note it is nearly headless Nick, and wait. The Sorting Hat is brought out. It sings. Harry watches the other first years watching it with the concentrated fascination of people encountering the genuinely impossible, and thinks, as he occasionally does, about the specific strange mercy of being 11 once, the world still large enough to have impossible things in it that you haven't already catalogued. Names are called. Children walk forward. The hat sorts. Hermione Granger is called 8th. She walks to the stool with perfect composure, sits, and the hat is lowered over her head. There is a pause, not long by the standards of later this evening, but long enough that a few first years exchange glances. Inside, the hat finds what it finds, a mind of extraordinary architecture. Not the soft, unformed landscape of 11-year-old cognition, but something layered and deliberate, a library of a mind in a library of a body, organized to a precision that the hat has not encountered in its many centuries of sorting. It finds 6 years of arithmetic theory, it finds the operational document, it finds the functional gobbledygook, and the pre-statute ward texts, and the 43-page legal petition, and the knowledge of things that an 11-year-old has no mechanism to know. The hat says, "Inside, simply what are you?" Hermione says, "Inside a Gryffindor, I think, if you don't mind." The hat says, "Gryffindor." The table cheers. Hermione sits down and folds her hands in her lap. More names, more sorting. Harry watches the hall, the ceiling open to a cloud-scattered sky, the candles, the 4 long tables, the staff at the head of the room. He finds Dumbledore at the center of the high table without looking for him, the way you find a fixed point when the rest of the room is in motion, and Dumbledore is already watching the first-year line with the specific attentiveness of a man who is looking for something he has not yet named. Harry looks away. Potter Harry. He walks forward. He sits on the stool. The hat comes down over his eyes, and the hall disappears, and what happens next happens in a darkness that belongs to neither of them. The hat reaches for his mind. It finds the cage. It has sorted students across nearly 1,000 years, and it has never found anything like the cage. Not a closed mind, not an Occlumence's practiced blankness, but something architectural, deliberate, constructed with a precision that takes the hat 3 full seconds to even recognize as intentional. Stone walls, sealed seams, and behind them not the ordinary furniture of an 11-year-old's inner life, but something else, something that has weight, something that has history, something that has already been to war. The hat does not speak to Harry the way it spoke to Hermione. It does not ask him what he is. It already knows in the way that things which are very old occasionally know the things they were not built to understand. It knows that this child is not a child in any meaningful sense. It knows that the thing in his scar is contained rather than gone. It knows that it is sitting on the head of someone who came here with a purpose and a schedule, and has already, before setting foot in this castle, done things the hat cannot fully account for. It knows it should probably say something about this. Gryffindor, it announces, because that part was never in question. And then, before the cheering starts, before Harry lifts the brim from his eyes, in the single-held breath of a hall waiting for the next moment, the Sorting Hat does something it has not done in centuries. It turns its brim toward the room. It says 4 words in a voice the entire hall hears. "Be careful, Hogwarts." Harry sets it back on the stool, walks to the Gryffindor table, sits beside Hermione, and pours himself a glass of water. At the high table, Albus Dumbledore has not moved. His hands are folded in front of him. His eyes are on Harry with an expression that is not surprise. Dumbledore has too much practice for surprise, but something slower and more careful. The expression of a man who has just heard a piece of information that rearranges other information he already held, and is very quietly beginning to take account of what the new arrangement means. He reaches for a lemon drop. He does not eat it. He watches. The first Defense Against the Dark Arts lesson of the year is on a Thursday. Harry knows what is in the room before he opens the door. The cage tells him. Not loudly, not the white-hot scream of proximity from the other life, when he had no cage and no preparation and no understanding of what the burning meant. This is quieter. A pressure against the inner walls, the soul shard responding to something outside its prison like a compass needle shifting toward north. He has been waiting for this since September 1st. He has been expecting it. Expecting it and experiencing it are different, and the difference is approximately the width of a hair, and he files the difference and walks into the classroom. Quirrell is at the front of the room adjusting a stack of papers with hands that shake slightly. He is wearing a purple turban. He smells, faintly, of garlic. He is afraid in the specific way of someone who has made an arrangement they regret and cannot now unmake. And beneath the fear, beneath Quirrell entirely, there is something else, a pressure of a different kind, cold and observing, that has nothing to do with the nervous young man at the front of the room. Harry sits in the middle of the 3rd row, not the front, not the back. He opens his notebook. He holds his quill correctly. He is 11 years old, and he is the most average student in this classroom, and he intends to remain so for the duration of every defense lesson this year. Hermione, beside him, also opens her notebook. Her handwriting during this lesson will be indecipherable to anyone who is not Harry, because she is writing 2 sets of notes simultaneously, one in standard text, one in cipher, and the cipher notes are the ones that matter. Quirrell begins to speak. His stutter is worse today than it will be tomorrow, and better than it was yesterday. The stutter has a rhythm, Harry has already noticed, correlated with specific hours of the day and specific emotional states, and the rhythm is not Quirrell's. The thing sharing his skull prefers the morning. It is more coherent in the morning. By evening, Quirrell gets something closer to himself back, briefly, and that is when the stutter is worst, when the two are fighting for the mouth. Harry copies the notes from the board. He does not raise his hand. When Quirrell's gaze moves across the third row, Harry's quill continues its patient movement across the parchment, and he does not look up, and Quirrell's gaze continues past him. 37 minutes of instruction on the theory of counter-jinxes. 4 minutes of questions, none from Harry. Class dismissed. In the corridor afterward, Hermione hands him the cipher notes without looking at him. He reads them while walking, they say. Confirmed, dual presence. The turban is the interface point. He keeps his hand near it when the secondary presence is dominant. Garlic as deterrent, he's trying to suppress it, not succeeding. Nighttime movements, the corridor warrants surveillance. I'll begin tonight. He folds the notes. He puts them in his pocket. He says nothing because there is nothing to say that the notes have not already said. He also notes, in the private accounting he keeps of their operational progress, 2 weeks ago in the first week of October he made his initial visit to the Chamber of Secrets. The locket is destroyed. That is one more domino committed to falling, in the dark below the school, in a visit Hermione knows about and Quirrell does not. One problem at a time. Hermione's detection array takes 3 nights to lay. She works between midnight and 3, using techniques drawn from the pre-statute ward texts and refined through 2 years of practice on the Granger family's garden shed, which now has better magical security than most Gringotts antechambers. The arrays are not visible. They do not emit light or sound. They record specifically the magical signature of anyone passing through the third-floor corridor between the hours of 11 at night and 4 in the morning, and they store that recording in a small piece of enchanted parchment that Hermione collects at dawn. Harry is not involved in the laying. The cage holds against ordinary proximity. 1 floor away, 3 walls between them. The shard barely registers a change in pressure, but he will not go near that corridor. The risk is not worth the intelligence advantage. Hermione is sufficient. She is, as a general rule, sufficient. The dossier grows across October. By the 22nd of the month it contains 11 nights of documented corridor access. Quirrell's unique magical signature, cross-referenced against his classroom activity and confirmed as belonging to a single individual undergoing regular possession. Timestamps correlating the possession periods with specific astrological and lunar conditions, which Hermione noted in passing while cross-referencing the ward data against the arithmetic calendar she keeps as a matter of habit. A 4-page written assessment, in plain English, of the spiritual possession mechanism, its canonical parameters, its historical precedents, and its implications for the object currently stored beyond the door Quirrell has been attempting to access for 11 consecutive nights without success. On the last page, 1 line, the host will deteriorate. Current trajectory suggests incapacitation by February at the latest. Earlier intervention is preferable. Harry reads the completed dossier on the evening of the 23rd. He reads it the way he reads all of Hermione's work, with the specific quality of attention that is looking not for what is there, but for what is missing. The stone, he says. It's safe for now, the protections hold. She doesn't look up from the arithmancy she is working on. Dumbledore's final protection is the issue. It requires the correct intent to retrieve it. Quirrell cannot pass it. Voldemort cannot pass it. The only way through is someone who wants to find it without using it, and that's not a category either of them occupies. So we're not protecting the stone, we're managing the timeline. We're managing the timeline, she agrees. He needs to be removed before the deterioration becomes irreversible. Quirrell, I mean. After that, Voldemort retreats. He has nowhere else to go until Pettigrew finds him, and Pettigrew doesn't find him until we let him. She confirms. Harry looks at the dossier. He looks at the line on the last page. He thinks about the chain of causality they are tending, the specific sequence of events that leads from this classroom in Scotland to a graveyard in Little Hangleton 2 years from now, the dominoes they have arranged with such care, the one they are about to push. Ragnarok's courier, he says. Already arranged. The package goes out Friday morning. No return address. Recipient confirmation required before delivery. The courier will verify Dumbledore's identity magically before handing it over. And if Dumbledore traces it back to us? She considers this for exactly the time it deserves, which is 5 seconds. The dossier contains no information that a precocious first year couldn't theoretically have assembled through careful observation. The ward detection arrays are technically just monitoring charms, nothing restricted. The arithmetic analysis could be attributed to independent study. A pause. He might suspect. We've discussed that he'll suspect from September 1st. But suspicion is not proof, and he is too careful a man to act on suspicion. He's also too careful a man to ignore the dossier. That's the point, she says, and picks her quill back up. Quirrell resigns on the 3rd of November. The announcement is made at breakfast by Professor McGonagall, briefly in the specific tone of someone delivering information they are not going to elaborate on. Professor Quirrell has stepped down for health reasons. A replacement will be arranged for the spring term. In the interim, the defense syllabus will be covered by the existing staff on rotation. The hall produces the sound of 300 people simultaneously trying to decide how they feel about this. Harry pours himself tea. He pours Hermione tea. He passes her the milk, without being asked. She adds the milk. She picks up her cup. She does not look at the empty chair at the staff table and does not need to, because they have both already looked at it and noted what it means and filed it. Across the hall, Ron Weasley is telling Neville Longbottom a theory about why Quirrell left that is entirely incorrect in every detail, and genuinely entertaining. Neville is nodding with the careful politeness of someone who suspects the theory is wrong but cannot identify where. At the staff table, Dumbledore's eyes move across the hall with the unhurried attention of a man cataloging things he does not intend to discuss yet. They pass over Harry. They pass over Hermione. They pause, briefly, on the space between them, on the cup Harry passed without being asked, and the milk Hermione added without responding, and the specific quality of their mutual silence, and then they move on. Harry drinks his tea. Somewhere, a thing that used to be Tom Riddle has retreated and is conducting an inventory of its remaining options. The inventory is not long. The body it had is gone. The stone it wanted is unreachable. The boy it expected to find diminished and manageable is not what it expected. It does not know about the dossier. It does not know about the detection arrays or the Ragno Courier or the 43-page petition that freed Sirius Black 3 years ago. It does not know about the cage or the kindergarten cabal or the plan that has been running since a cupboard under the stairs in 1985. It knows only that something has changed, that its agent is gone, that the board looks different from how it looked last month, and that the difference has the quality of intention rather than accident. It will have time to reconsider. They are allowing it that time. For now, the room of requirement gives up the diadem without argument. Harry walks past the 7th floor corridor 3 times with the specific thought, I need to find what has been hidden here by someone who wanted it lost. The door appears on the 3rd pass. The room beyond it is vast and dark and full of centuries of accumulated objects. Towers of broken furniture, stacked portraits, anonymous trunks, the particular archaeology of a school that keeps everything and examines nothing. He finds the diadem balanced on the head of a stone bust, half buried beneath a cascade of fallen shelving, exactly where Rowena Ravenclaw's daughter hid it 800 years ago, believing no one would ever look. It is exquisite, even corroded, even cold with the particular cold of a Horcrux, which is not temperature but something else, something that makes the back of the teeth ache. The engraving is still legible. Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure. Harry wraps it in a cloth Hermione has prepared. 3 layers, the innermost woven with suppression charms, the outermost standard linen. He carries it carefully. Objects that have held a fragment of a human soul for 50 years are not structurally stable. He is aware of this. He is 11 years old and he is aware of this, which continues to be a sentence that describes his life. Hermione is waiting in the corridor. He shows her the wrapped bundle. She checks the suppression charm with a brief diagnostic, nods, and puts it in her bag. Tonight, he says. Tonight, she agrees. Moaning Myrtle's bathroom is empty at 2 a.m. Myrtle herself is absent. She tends, Harry has observed, to avoid the sink when she can, in the specific way of something that remembers a bad experience without entirely understanding it. The sinks are old and damp, and the mirrors need cleaning. The entrance is a tap on the tap with a small engraved serpent, and then a word in a language that is not English and is not any language Hermione can speak, and the sink drops away into darkness. Harry looks at her. She looks back, her expression doing the specific calculation it does when she is about to assert competence in a situation where she does not in fact have all the information. I've read about the chamber extensively, she says. I know. I understand the physiology. Direct eye contact is the kill vector. Indirect contact, reflection, seeing through something else, causes petrification, not death. If I keep my eyes closed or use the mirror, she produces a small compact mirror from her bag, the Muggle kind, entirely functional. I can navigate the basilisk's presence safely. I know that too. He had also prepared for it, which is why he is going to enter first, speak to Mira before Hermione descends, and ensure that when Hermione arrives, the largest serpent in Britain has been specifically asked to look at the far wall. I go first, he says. Obviously, she says. He drops into the pipe. The chamber is as he left it 3 weeks ago, on his first visit. Cold, old, the smell of the underground river, stone serpents lining the walls, their blank eyes aimed at the ceiling. At the far end, the great sealed door with its circular handle. The locket was destroyed here, on that first visit, in a room that smelled of exactly this. Stone and water and centuries of waiting. Mira had been patient then. She is patient now. Harry walks to the door. He says, in parcel tongue, Mira, it's me. Then, from the darkness beyond, the small speaker returns. You brought the other object. Yes. Another like the first one. Are you well? The question seems to require consideration. In canon, no one has asked it. In this life, Harry has asked it twice now. Once on the first visit, once now, and each time the pause before the answer is slightly shorter, as if Mira is recalibrating her understanding of what the word well might mean in relation to herself. I am as I have been, she says, which is not poorly. I have been thinking about what you said, at the previous visit, that the first cold object was the last one made by the same hand as made the thing in your forehead. There are others by that hand. This is the second to last I'll need your help with. And after, I come back and tell you it's over. Good, Mira says simply. Bring the one who smells of ink. I will look at the wall. Harry opens the chamber door. He calls up, you can come down. Hermione descends with her compact mirror held at an angle that shows her the floor in front of her feet and the reflected lower portion of the room. She navigates by this. Her face is composed. Her breathing is slightly faster than usual. She sees Mira in the mirror. She says nothing. She has been told what to expect. Size, coloring, the specific architecture of a creature scaled to mythological proportions. But reading about something and seeing its reflection in a small Muggle compact are experientially different. She stands very still for 3 seconds. Then she takes the cloth-wrapped diadem from her bag and holds it out to Harry without speaking. Harry takes it. He carries it toward Mira, who is facing the western wall as promised, her enormous body coiled in the cathedral space of the chamber, her scales the color of deep water in the dark. He says, I need to ask you something. You need my venom, Mira says. Factual, with the equanimity of something that has had a very long time to develop equanimity. The cold object, yes, this one carries the same corruption as the first. Tell me what it says. Harry looks at the engraving. Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure. And yet someone filled this object with something very stupid, Mira says. Harry laughs. It is brief and genuine and slightly startled out of him, and behind him, Hermione, who has heard the parcel-tongue exchange as a series of sounds like water over rock and wind in old timber, looks at his back with an expression that is mostly curiosity, and partly something more careful. Mira strikes. Precise, controlled. One fang, a single drop of venom at the exact center of the diadem where the Horcrux anchors itself. It is not a dramatic movement. It is a physician with a needle, no more. The diadem cracks down the center. The crack is silent. The thing that comes out of it is less than silent. A pressure, a wrongness, the specific unpleasantness of a soul fragment denied its vessel. It lasts 4 seconds. Then it is gone. The diadem is metal and memory and nothing else. Harry wraps it back in the cloth. It doesn't matter anymore. It is just an object now. Thank you, he says. Come back, Mira says, when the task is finished. Come and tell me it is finished. I will. He carries the dead diadem back to the door. He and Hermione ascend through the pipe in silence, back to the bathroom, back to the castle, back to the world that doesn't know what has just happened in the dark below it. In the corridor, Hermione says, "What did she say?" at the end. Harry considers this for a moment. She asked me to come back when it's over. Will you? Yes. Hermione walks beside him for a moment. Then she says very quietly, "She's been down there for a very long time." I know. And no one ever... No, he says, not once. They walk back to Gryffindor Tower in silence. The castle is quiet around them, Old Stone doing what Old Stone does, holding. Outside, the Scottish November presses against the windows, dark and indifferent, and 5 Horcruxes are destroyed, and 2 remained, and a basilisk in a chamber below the school is looking away from the western wall now, curling in the darkness, keeping something warm that has no name, but has been there since October. The fire in the common room has been burning for 3 hours and nobody has told it to stop. It is 11:30. The last of the second years drifted upstairs 40 minutes ago. Ron Weasley is still here, long legs stretched toward the fire, a charms essay in his lap that he has been pretending to work on since 9 o'clock. Harry is in the armchair to his left. Hermione has the sofa, a transfiguration text opened across her knees, and has been reading the same page for 20 minutes. They are not talking. This is not unusual. They have developed across a year and a half of shared space, the specific kind of silence that exists between people who are comfortable enough not to fill it. Ron is the one who speaks. "Can I ask you something?" he says, "and you'll answer it honestly?" Harry looks at him. Hermione looks up from the page she has not been reading. "You two aren't surprised by anything," Ron says. He says it the way he says things he's been thinking about for a while, with the particular flatness of someone who has already had the argument with himself, and is now reporting the result. "I've been trying to figure out if it's just how you are, whether it's a personality thing, being calm, but it's not that." He looks at the fire. "When Lockhart set those pixies loose at the start of term, everyone else panicked. You two just moved, like you already knew where you were going to stand." He pauses. "And there's other things. Smaller things. The way you talk sometimes when you think I'm not listening. The way Harry knew about the third-floor corridor in first year before Dumbledore even." He stops. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I just want to know if there's something I'm not in on." The fire does what fires do. Harry looks at Hermione. She is looking at him. The look is not long and it is not dramatic. It is the look of two people who have had a version of this conversation privately for 16 months and now find it in the room with them and are deciding in the space of one breath what to do about it. Hermione says, carefully, "You're perceptive, Ron." "Yeah, I've always thought so," he says. "My mom says I don't pay enough attention." She's thinking of a different kind of attention. He looks at them both now. "So is it something I'm not in on?" "Yes," Harry says. Ron nods slowly. "All right." He waits. "We're not going to tell you tonight," Harry says. I want to tell you everything. But I can't yet, and I'm not going to pretend there isn't a reason. There is a reason. It's a good one. And it's not that we don't trust you. It's the opposite." Ron is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "You're telling me there's a thing, you know what the thing is. You're not going to tell me what the thing is, but the reason you're not telling me is because you trust me." Harry watches him think about it, watches the particular deliberative quality of Ron's intelligence working through the shape of something he cannot see the interior of. Assessing it from the outside, he is 12 years old and he is doing this with a seriousness that most adults don't manage. "Okay," Ron says finally, "but you'll tell me eventually." "Yes," Harry says. "When it's over." "When what's over?" "That's the part I can't tell you yet." Ron looks at the fire for a long moment. Then he says, "You'd better," and picks up his essay, and the conversation is done. Later, the dormitory. Ron asleep in the bed to Harry's left with the uncomplicated efficiency of someone who has decided not to worry about something. Until he needs to. Harry looks at the ceiling. He thinks about what Ron said. "You two aren't surprised by anything." It is, in 8 words, one of the most accurate assessments of the duo that anyone in this castle has managed, including several people who are paid to assess things. Ron Weasley, who gets average marks in most of his classes and excellent marks in the ones that require spatial reasoning. Who plays chess with the instincts of a general and the patience of a much older person. Who has known them for a year and a half and has been quietly building a picture of them from the pieces he's collected. They will have to be more careful. Harry knows this. He also knows it's not really about being more careful. Being more careful is a postponement, not a solution. The solution is telling Ron or not telling Ron, and neither of those is fully available yet. The disagreement, it is not an argument, they do not argue. It is a disagreement conducted over 3 days in brief segments, in corridors and empty classrooms, and one increasingly tense walk around the lake. Goes as follows. Hermione's position: the mission is not complete. Telling Ron now means carrying the information through the Pettigrew phase, through the resurrection trap, through everything that remains, with a third variable in the system who is 12 years old and has 7 older siblings who speak to each other constantly, and 2 parents who work in proximity to the ministry. She is not questioning Ron's character, She is questioning the architecture of a secret that was never designed to be carried by three. Harry's position, Ron has already noticed. Ron noticed 6 months ago, probably earlier, and has been sitting with it, and chose tonight to say something, and the way he asked, "I'm not accusing you of anything," is the way a person asks who has already decided they are going to be all right with the answer, and that quality of pre-decided loyalty is not nothing. Hermione says, "Emotional reasoning." Hermione says, "Those are sometimes the same thing and sometimes not." Harry says, "I know which one this is." She doesn't answer for a moment. They are walking around the lake. The Scottish February is making specific points about the foolishness of being outside, and they are ignoring it. "He'll be angry," she says. "Yes. When we tell him, he'll be angry that we didn't tell him sooner." "Yes. And then he'll ask what's next." Harry looks at her. "You've thought about how he'll react." "I think about everything," she says, which is true and not an answer, and also the most honest thing she has said about it. "I've thought about telling him since October of first year. I've thought about not telling him since October of first year. And I don't know." She pulls her coat tighter. "I don't know, Harry," which is an unusual enough experience that I'm taking it seriously. They walk. The lake is gray and the squid is not visible, and the castle behind them sends light out across the grounds in long yellow bars that don't reach this far. "What if," Harry says, "we don't decide yet? What if we continue to not decide, and we let Ron continue to know that there's a thing, and we continue to trust him with the shape of the secret, even if not the content?" That's what we've been doing. Until we can't, Hermione is quiet for a long time. Then, "He called me perceptive. You said he was perceptive. He is. Differently than us, but genuinely." A pause. "I like him." "I know you do." It's an inconvenient time to like someone, she says, with the specific dryness of someone identifying a structural problem in their own emotional architecture. "It always is," Harry says. Ron is at breakfast when they come down the next morning. He has saved them seats, not ostentatiously, not in the way of someone making a point, but the way someone does when they get there first and consider it obvious that the people they're saving seats for will come. He has also gotten Harry's tea wrong, which Harry will not mention, and has poured Hermione's correctly without being asked, because he has paid attention to that and not to the tea. He doesn't say anything about the previous night. He is talking to Neville about something to do with a herbology practical, and he moves over when Harry sits down, and he passes the toast without being asked, and he is, specifically irreducibly, himself. Harry looks at him. He looks at the seat Ron saved. He looks at the tea, which is wrong and which he will drink anyway. He thinks, when the time comes, the anger will last 20 minutes. Then Ron will ask what's next. He has already decided. That's the kind of person he is. That's the kind of person who deserves to be told the truth, and who they will tell it to, and who will carry it exactly as well as Harry has always known he would, which is, not perfectly, not without pain, but with the specific loyalty of someone who made his decision about you before the hard part arrived. Harry drinks the tea. It is slightly too strong. He doesn't mention it. Neither does anyone else. The operational document for the Ministry Purge is 11 pages. Sirius reads it at the kitchen table at Grimmauld Place on a Sunday afternoon in January, while Creature makes pointed noises about lunch from somewhere behind the pantry door. He reads it the way he has learned to read everything Harry and Hermione produce, beginning to end without interruption, then back to the sections that surprised him. Then a long pause during which his face does something specific and internal that Harry has started to recognize as Sirius recalibrating his understanding of how old Harry actually is. He sets it down. "You want me to have dinner with Lucius Malfoy?" he says. Eventually, Harry says, "That's the last step." The document goes chronologically. "I know," I read it. Sirius turns back to page 4. "You want me to redirect the Black family patronage allocations. 12 annual endowments, running since my grandfather's time, away from the departments where Lucius has leverage and toward Amelia Bones's DMLE reform budget, yes, while simultaneously using my Wizengamot seat to block his judicial appointments. It restores automatically upon exoneration. You've had it for 3 years and you haven't used it yet, which has allowed Malfoy to assume it's not coming. The fudge operation is my favorite part. We thought you might feel that way. You want me to, let me make sure I have this right, not remove Fudge because he's manageable and predictable, and instead engineer a situation where he becomes personally indebted to me, so that he appoints me to the Judicial Oversight Committee of the Wizengamot, which is the committee that has oversight authority over—" He pauses. Over the same judicial appointments Lucius needs to push through. Yes, Sirius puts the document down. He looks at Harry, then at Hermione, then at the ceiling, which is doing nothing of interest. "You're 12, he says. He won't turn 12 until July. Almost 12. Sirius picks the document back up. "Tell me about the leak to the Prophet." The financial dismantling takes 4 months and is, of its kind, beautiful. The Black family has been funding 17 ministry-adjacent departments and charitable concerns since 1893. Most of this funding runs through endowment instruments established by Sirius's ancestors, which accrue interest quarterly and disperse automatically to their designated recipients. The recipients have come to regard this money the way they regard weather. It arrives, it is used, its source is not examined. Sirius spends February and March visiting 12 of the 17, in person, which is the point. He arrives unannounced, or announced with minimal notice, dressed in the specific quality of robes that signal old money rather than new, and he is charming and warm and entirely specific about the reason for his visit. He is, he explains, reviewing the Black family's philanthropic commitments following his period of, he pauses here, lets them hear the pause, absence. He is finding some of the current allocations difficult to justify to the family vault trustees. He has, however, identified several alternative programs that seem far better aligned with what the Black family has always stood for. He then mentions in passing Amelia Bones's name. He mentions it the way you mention something incidentally, as if it has occurred to him just now, as if the thought is spontaneous rather than the product of an operational document written by 2 children who have been planning this specific sentence for 2 years. By April, 9 of the 12 endowments have been redirected. 3 remain with their original recipients, because those 3 are genuinely useful, and realigning them would cause collateral disruption that the operational document does not recommend. Harry and Hermione wrote this exception into the plan at the beginning, because the point is not to destroy. The point is to surgically remove Lucius Malfoy's leverage while leaving the underlying structures intact for when they're needed later. The financial effect on Lucius Malfoy is not catastrophic. It is something more precise than catastrophic. It is the specific sensation of reaching for something in the dark that has always been there and finding that it has moved, and not knowing when it moved, and not being able to identify whose hand moved it. Sirius finds this deeply satisfying. He does not disguise this because he has agreed with Harry and Hermione that disguising it would be a waste of effort. Lucius Malfoy spent 12 years benefiting from a world in which Sirius Black was in Azkaban. Some degree of visible satisfaction is operationally acceptable. The Wizengamot seat activates in May. Sirius claims the Black family's hereditary position at a session of the full chamber, which requires him to walk into a room containing 6 people who know exactly what he was in Azkaban for and have spent 11 years building political architecture that assumed he would never walk out. He wears the Black family sigil. He sits in the Black family seat. He greets each of the 6 by name, warmly, with the specific warmth of someone who has excellent memory and no intention of wasting it. He then votes against 4 consecutive Malfoy-sponsored judicial appointments. Each vote is accompanied by a brief, technically impeccable procedural objection that Hermione drafted over a weekend in April, citing the relevant Wizengamot Charter clauses with the precision of someone who has been studying wizarding constitutional law since age 9 for exactly this purpose. Each objection is airtight. Each objection requires a minimum 2-session review period before the appointment can proceed. By October, Lucius Malfoy's reliable Wizengamot majority has become an uncertain plurality. By December, it is 3 votes short of reliable. The Malfoy-sponsored judicial appointments are in procedural limbo, trailing Sirius's objections like a coat caught in a door. Sirius describes the experience to Harry as the most fun I have had in a room since the Marauders. Harry notes this in no document. The Daily Prophet story runs in November. The source is anonymous. The source, in practice, is a single piece of correspondence between Bartemius Crouch Sr. and the minister's office from November 1981, which Ragnarok's legal team obtained during the original exoneration proceedings, and which Harry has been holding for 3 years waiting for the correct moment. The correspondence establishes in Crouch's own handwriting that the minister's office was notified of Sirius Black's detention within 48 hours of his imprisonment and chose not to initiate standard review procedures. They chose not to. This is not illegal. It is not the kind of thing that ends careers on its own. It is, however, the kind of thing that becomes extremely uncomfortable when reported in detail, by name, with the original correspondence reproduced in full in the Daily Prophet in a story that runs on the front page above the fold on a Thursday morning. Cornelius Fudge reads it at breakfast. Harry does not witness this, but he knows from the operational document and from everything he understands about Fudge that Fudge reads it twice and then contacts his press liaison and then contacts 3 advisors and then calls a meeting and then cancels the meeting and then has what can only be described as a difficult Thursday. By the following Monday, Fudge's office has reached out to Sirius privately. By the end of the month, Sirius has been appointed to the Wisengamet's Judicial Oversight Committee. Hermione receives the news via letter. She reads it at breakfast. She shows it to Harry. Harry reads it. He passes it back. Neither of them says anything for a moment. Then Hermione says, quietly, "The fox and the hen house." "The fox and the hen house," Harry confirms. They eat their breakfast. Around them, Gryffindor Hall proceeds with its ordinary morning. The letter from Ragnarok arrives on a Wednesday, delivered by Goblin Courier to the Hogwarts entrance hall, addressed in gobbledygook to Harry James Potter, declared adult, account holder. The duty professor, Sprout today, examines it with appropriate suspicion and hands it over when Harry produces his account documentation. He opens it in the corridor outside, 3 sentences. He reads them and gives the letter to Hermione without comment. She reads it, she does the calculation he has already done. 5 down, 2 remaining. Nagini and the scar. The scar is handled in June. Nagini is handled the same night. She folds the letter and puts it in her bag. She says, "Ragnarok's team is thorough. 6 years for an internal audit," Harry says. "They take their time. They found it. They confirmed it. They destroyed it without anyone outside that room knowing what they were actually doing." This nod means filed, accounted for, progressing on schedule. They walk back to class. Lucius Malfoy's quarterly dinner is held on the 14th of February 1993, which is not a coincidence. Lucius has hosted this dinner on the 14th of February since 1986 because the date signals to those who know how to read such signals a particular quality of established permanence. The dinner has always been full. The dinner has always been attended by the correct people. 14 invitations go out in January. 12 regrets arrive in the 72 hours before the dinner. The reasons given are illness, 4, prior commitment 3, travel 2, family obligation 2, and one that says simply unable to attend with no explanation, which is somehow the worst one. The 2 who arrive, a junior department head from International Magical Cooperation, who believes he is attending a different event entirely and spends the first course confused, and Sirius Black, who was not invited. Sirius arrives in black family robes at 7:15, mentions pleasantly that he thought the invitation must have been lost in the post, and sits at the far end of the table. Over the following 3 hours, he identifies 14 pieces of black family property on Lucius Malfoy's walls: silverwork, 2 portraits, a mirror, a clock, various decorative items that passed to the Malfoy family through Narcissus dowry, and is warmly and specifically curious about each of them. He asks their histories. He admires the condition they've been kept in. He says twice that it is very good to see the family's legacy so well maintained. Lucius Malfoy eats the dinner that has been prepared for 14 people in a room containing 2 guests and his wife, and he says very little, and at some point in the 3rd course he begins to count. He counts the allies. He counts the former allies. He constructs the timeline of each defection. When the endowment redirected, when the Wisengamot vote fell, when the departmental relationships cooled, when the invitations stopped being accepted. He maps the timeline backward, looking for the origin point, looking for the moment this began. He reaches 1992, then 1991, then further. He comes to rest finally on a number, 5. He sits with that number through dessert, and into the port and through Sirius Black, saying a warm goodnight to the portrait of his great-aunt in the hallway. He sits with it long after the door closes. 5 years old. Something that was 5 years old when this started. Something that knew, at 5 years old, what it was building and why, and began building it, and has been building it ever since, and has not stopped. He does not sleep well that night. He will not sleep well again for some time. The decision takes 3 hours to make, and 2 sentences to record in the operational document. Hermione writes it in plain text rather than cipher, which is how they mark the decisions they need to see clearly. We are going to allow Pettigrew to escape. We are going to allow Voldemort to return to a body. This is the only path to permanent resolution, and we have examined every alternative, and this is what remains. She puts down her quill. They look at the 2 sentences together in the library at 10:30 on a Thursday evening in August. The castle quiet around them with most students gone for summer. The operational document opened between them like a wound that needs to be examined rather than dressed. There's no other way to destroy the scar Horcrux, Harry says. Not a question. They have been through this. The killing curse from Voldemort's wand specifically. In a body, nothing else produces the same targeted magical event. Hermione's voice has the quality it gets when she is saying something true that she does not enjoy saying. The Fiend Fire Circle for the scar requires his curse as the initiating event. That's the arithmancy. I've checked it 4 times. I know. We need him back. I know. Harry looks at the 2 sentences. Then we need him back on a schedule we control. So the first thing is Pettigrew. Pettigrew is in Azkaban, convicted, serving life. He has been there since 1989 when the Sirius exoneration proceedings produced enough residual evidence. Specifically, Sirius's Veritaserum testimony about the secret keeper switch and the animagus capability to bring him in. He is currently being held in a cell on the Eastern Bloc. He has not attempted escape. He will not attempt escape. This is the problem. In the original timeline, Pettigrew broke out on his own initiative. In this one, the Dementors have been too effective. Pettigrew's guilt produces overwhelming, omnipresent emotion, not the controlled numbness of an innocent man, but the saturating dread of someone who knows precisely what he did and cannot stop knowing it. The Dementors feed on him constantly and thoroughly. He is too psychologically broken to attempt transformation, let alone the sustained effort a real escape would require. He is a cornered rat in both senses, paralyzed by the weight of his own conscience. He will not get out on his own. They need to give him the means. The escape is engineered in August. Hermione's method: she contacts Sirius, who contacts a Wisengamot colleague in the Magical Law Enforcement Oversight Committee, his recent appointment courtesy of Fudge's compensatory guilt, and arranges for a routine welfare assessment of the Eastern Bloc cells. The assessment brings a different warden rotation for 48 hours. During that rotation, on a specific night, Pettigrew's cell is briefly enough that it might be a clerical oversight, assigned a guard with a habitual lateness. 12 minutes. Enough for a desperate man who finally, after 3 years of paralysis, decides that the alternative to escape is dying in this cell, which is true. Pettigrew escapes on a Thursday, before dawn. Eastern Bloc, he transforms at the first opportunity and does not transform back. Harry knows because the surveillance system registers the passage. 3 owls stationed at intervals along the most likely transit route toward continental Europe and, from there, Albania. The first owl detects Pettigrew's magical signature crossing the channel in late August. The second confirms his presence in the northeastern Albanian highlands in September. Harry tells Hermione. She marks the date on the arithmetic calendar. She calculates 8 months from Pettigrew's arrival with Voldemort to completion of the resurrection ritual, the minimum time required to locate a spirit of Voldemort's depleted state, nurse it into coherence, acquire Nagini as a vessel, source the ritual components, and execute the ceremony. She calculates forward from the preparation requirements for the graveyard, 6 months of ward laying, surveillance, and fiendfire calibration. The buffer is approximately 2 months. Adequate. Not comfortable, but adequate. June, she says. June, Harry agrees. She marks June in the calendar in plain text. No cipher, the same notation as the decision that started this. 1 week after Pettigrew's escape, Harry writes a letter. It takes him 40 minutes. Not because the content is difficult, he has known what it will say since the decision was made, but because the language is Parseltongue, which cannot be written in standard characters. He has developed, over several years of practice and 1 long weekend with Hermione's arithmetic notation system, a phonetic transcription method that allows him to write Parseltongue in a way he can later read aloud. He writes the letter in this transcription. He will read it onto a second piece of parchment, speaking the words, which then inscribe themselves in the sibilant fluid script of the language itself, and it is the second parchment that will be sent. He reads it. He checks it twice. He hands it to Hermione for structural review, because even in Parseltongue he defaults to her editing. She reads the transcription. She changes 1 word. He reads the corrected version onto the sending parchment. The letter goes to Ragnok's Eastern European contact via Goblin Courier, with instructions: deliver to the location of highest dark magical concentration in the northeastern Albanian highlands. If the location is a ruin, a cave, a derelict structure, confirm delivery and return. Do not read the contents. Do not reproduce the contents. Do not record this delivery. The courier returns 4 days later. Confirmed. In an Albanian ruin, in the dark, in borrowed snake flesh that keeps him breathing until something better presents itself, The thing that used to be Tom Riddle reads the letter. It arrives folded. It arrives, inexplicably, without a visible sender or delivery mechanism. The goblin courier placed it at the ruin's threshold and was gone before the spirit registered the intrusion. This alone is remarkable. This alone warrants the careful attention with which the letter is opened. It is short. It is in parcel tongue, which means either the sender is a native speaker, there are none in Britain beyond Harry Potter, or the sender has mastered a written form of the language that has not existed in standardized notation for 4 centuries. It reads, "I know where you are. I know what you are waiting for. I know what Pettigrew is going to offer you. I am going to let this happen, and then I am going to kill you in a location of my choosing. I am 12 years old. I thought you should know." The spirit reads it 3 times. The first time for content, the second time to check for errors. Perhaps it has misread. Perhaps the parcel tongue phonology is imprecise and the meaning is something other than what it appears to be. The third time, because the third time produces the same result as the second time, which produces the same result as the first. And the result is this: a 12-year-old child has located him in Albania, has anticipated Pettigrew's arrival, has communicated in a dead written language, and has announced the precise shape of the coming months not as a threat, but as a briefing, as information being shared with a party who is entitled to know. The spirit sits with this for a long time. It sits with the specific quality of the letter's register, the flatness of it, the absence of anger or triumph or fear, the voice of someone who has already finished counting and is now simply reporting the total. It reaches for the connection that should exist in the scar, the link it has relied on since 1981, the line it can follow to find Harry Potter's emotional state when it needs to. It reaches and finds nothing. Stone, walls, sealed seams with no gap in them. The walls have been there since Quirrell. A 12-year-old child built those walls. The spirit knows, in the ancient way of something that has studied power its entire existence, what occlumency of that quality requires. It knows what it costs to sustain. It knows that no child can do it. And yet, it folds the letter, it places it carefully in the debris of the ruin, where it will stay until the ruin falls entirely. It thinks about the word let. I am going to let this happen. Not I cannot stop this. Not I am preparing to fight this. Let, the word of someone who has considered the alternative and rejected it. The word of someone who has decided that Voldemort's return serves their purpose and is therefore being permitted. He is, for the first time since the night James and Lily Potter died in Godric's Hollow, afraid. Not of the threat. He has faced threats. He has broken and outlasted threats. He is afraid of the thing behind the letter, of the mind that produced those 2 sentences and that register at that age and that language. Afraid in the specific way of a man who has spent his entire life believing he understood the game and has just read a move that was not in any game he recognizes. He waits for Pettigrew. He begins, quietly and without any way to remedy it, to wonder if he has fundamentally misunderstood his enemy. The graveyard has been ready for 6 months. They arrive at sundown, which gives them 5 hours before Pettigrew and 4 before full dark. Hermione does a final check of every ward in sequence, walking the perimeter with her wand tracing diagnostic patterns that leave no light, only the faint warmth of confirmed resonance against her palm. The outer ring first, anti-apparition, keyed to activate the moment a specific magical threshold is crossed during the ritual, which will prevent the Death Eaters Pettigrew intends to summon from arriving at all. Then the inner suppression layer, which will prevent the creation or reinforcement of any Horcrux anchor magic within the perimeter. Then the containment circle around the Riddle family grave marker, where the Fiendfire waits in potential, calibrated to a specific magical signature, which she has checked against her calculations 4 times tonight, and will not check a 5th, because the 4th confirmed what the 3rd confirmed, and continuing to check is fear, not diligence. She puts her wand away. The graveyard is ready, she says. Harry, sitting on the low stone wall of the Riddle family enclosure, nods. He is looking at the grave marker. Thomas Riddle, Mary Riddle, 3 names carved in stone, old and ordinary, belonging to people who did not ask to be part of this. The father's bones are beneath the marker and will be used in approximately 4 hours, which is one of the more specific ironies of this evening's agenda. He takes the cage apart 1 layer at a time and examines what it has been holding. The soul shard is there, as it has been since 1980, cold and occupying a space in his skull that has never fully been his. He has lived with it for 8 years of this life and 1 entire life before it. He looks at it the way you look at a thing you are finally about to put down. He rebuilds the cage. Not yet. When Hermione runs the circle, he will lower it again, deliberately for exactly long enough. And then it will be over, and there will be nothing left to cage. The wards will hold against anything he throws, Hermione says. She sits on the wall beside him, not close enough that it reads as comfort, close enough that it is. I know. He cannot create Nagini's Horcrux intentionally. The ward will detect the anchoring attempt and sever it at formation. I know. And the Fiendfire circle. Hermione, he looks at her. We've run it 40 times. 41, she says. Last Thursday. I know all of it. You built all of it correctly. That's not what I'm thinking about. A pause. The night does what the night does in June, stays half-light too long, then goes dark all at once. Bats somewhere. A road, distant. What are you thinking about, she asks. Harry considers the answer honestly, that it ends tonight. All of it, that after tonight we're just students. She is quiet for a moment, then, does that seem wrong? It seems very strange, he says. I'll get used to it. They wait. Pettigrew arrives at 11:34, small and furtive, and carrying the rudimentary vessel with the care of someone handling something that frightens them. He does not see them. They are behind the wall, in the dark, invisible in the specific way of two people who have been training not to be noticed since before they started school. Harry watches the ritual begin. He watches Pettigrew's hands shake. He watches the cauldron activate, the water turn, the sequence he memorized from Snape's stolen memory in another life, proceeding exactly as it did then, exactly as it must. Bone of the father unwillingly given. The ground opens. Flesh of the servant, willingly sacrificed. Pettigrew's face, the specific white of genuine pain. Blood of the enemy, forcibly taken. And here Pettigrew comes for Harry, because there is no other enemy here. And Harry lets him because this too is part of the sequence. Because the blood is required, and the cauldron needs what the cauldron needs. He doesn't flinch from the cut. Hermione, 3 feet away behind the stone, is perfectly still. The cauldron blazes white. The outer perimeter ward locks at the same instant. Harry feels it through the stone beneath his feet, the subtle change in pressure that means the boundary is sealed and no one is apparating in or out until he or Hermione releases it, and Voldemort rises. He is exactly as Harry remembers from the other life. Tall, white and thin, and wrong in the specific way of something that chose to unmake itself in order to persist. Red eyes that are not quite eyes, a face that has shed everything soft. He stands in the cauldron's light and breathes and extends one long-fingered hand, and the night air accepts him into it without protest, because the night air does not know what has been prepared. He looks around the graveyard. He looks at Pettigrew, crumpled and nursing his wrist. He looks at the perimeter wards with the attention of someone sensing a boundary he cannot immediately account for. He looks at the graves. He is cataloging, assessing, reconstructing the shape of the moment. Then he looks at the wall. Harry stands up. Tom, he says, the name lands the way it always lands, like a door opened without permission, like something private suddenly exterior. Voldemort's face does not change in any way Harry would call ordinary. It changes in the way of something experiencing a category of event it had not calculated for. I thought you should have a briefing before we proceed, Harry says. The letter was a summary. This is more complete. He is 13 years old, and he speaks in the register of someone giving a report. The Horcruxes. Tom Riddle's diary. Destroyed via ministry confiscation, 1989. You never knew it was gone. Slytherin's locket. Destroyed in October 1991. The Chamber of Secrets. Basilisk venom. Gaunt ring. Destroyed 1990. The shack in Little Hangleton. Different visit to this one. Hufflepuff's cup destroyed this year. Gringotts internal audit. Ragnarok's team. Ravenclaw's diadem destroyed November 1991. The chamber again. He pauses. Your Scar Horcrux is about to be destroyed in approximately 6 minutes. The Nagini Horcrux has already been severed. You'll notice the ward activated when you tried to anchor it, which would have been instinctive, which means it's already gone. 6, Harry says, all 6 beyond yourself. That's the briefing. He has not raised his wand. He has not moved from where he is standing. Behind him, Hermione is in position at the outer edge of the containment circle with her own wand in hand and 41 rehearsals in her muscle memory. Voldemort speaks for the first time. His voice is high and cold, and the graveyard accepts it with the same indifference with which it accepted his breathing. You are a child, he says. I know, Harry says. That hasn't been a problem so far. He is powerful. Harry has never underestimated this, and does not now. the killing curse comes first. Of course it does. Green and absolute and aimed with the precision of someone who has cast it 10,000 times. And it hits the inner suppression ward and fragments into light and nothing, which is what a killing curse does when it meets a soul anchor ward that Hermione spent 6 months perfecting using pre-ministry text she has understood more completely than their authors. Voldemort does not stop. He is not a man who stops. He sends 4 curses in sequence, 2 Cruciatus, 1 Severing Hex, one that Harry does not fully recognize but that his body recognizes as danger, and his feet have already moved before his mind has processed. And each one meets a wall and gives some of what it carried to the wall, and the wall returns nothing. The wards are eating him. This is what they were designed to do. Hermione, Harry says. Ready, she says, from outside the perimeter, steady. He looks at the containment circle around the Riddle family grave. He looks at the scar. He takes the cage apart. It is not like pain, exactly. Pain has a direction. Pain arrives from somewhere and goes somewhere. This is something that fills the space that the cage occupied for 8 years and then burns, specifically and completely, from the inside. The soul shard catching the fiend fire the way dry paper catches a held flame. All at once, no resistance, because Hermione has spent 6 months calibrating the frequency, and the frequency is correct. Harry sits down very hard on the grass beside the Riddle wall. He breathes through it, in, hold, out. The cage is gone because what was in it is gone. The space in his skull where the Horcrux lived for 12 years and 2 lives is simply space. Quiet. His. He breathes. Voldemort is still casting. The wards are taking everything and giving back nothing, and he is a man who has never in his life encountered a wall he could not climb, and is discovering, at the peak of his restored power, in a graveyard in the dark, that this one was not designed to be climbed. It was designed to be leaned against until the leaning man falls. He does not fall quietly. He is not the sort of man who falls quietly. He casts until he cannot, which takes longer than Harry expected because Voldemort is very powerful and is not yet afraid enough to conserve what he has left. He burns it trying to find the gap that is not there. He burns it calling for Death Eaters who cannot apparate in. He burns it trying to force Nagini, the ordinary snake now, the snake without a Horcrux in her, the snake that Hermione's ward severed before the anchor could set, toward Harry with hissed commands that Harry understands and that Nagini no longer has any reason to obey. He burns it standing in the graveyard that was built for this specific purpose, in the most dangerous 40 square meters in Britain, which is what it is because Hermione Granger spent 6 months making it so. When he falls, it is not heroic. It is the falling of a machine that has run without fuel until the running stops. He is there, and then he is not in any way that matters, and the night is quiet again, and the bats somewhere, and the distant road, and Pettigrew making small sounds against the wall where Harry's first incantation of the evening bound him 3 hours ago. Hermione releases the outer perimeter. She walks to where Harry is sitting on the grass. She does not say the words that could be said. Are you all right? Is it gone? Is it over? Because they are in cipher now, all 3. And the cipher for all of those questions is the same. She sits beside him. She says, "Drink the tea first." There is no tea. There is never tea in a graveyard at midnight. This is the first time the phrase has been used where the literal meaning is entirely absent and the actual meaning is entirely present, and Harry understands it the way he understands everything she says, which is immediately and completely. Survival first, everything else after. He breathes. In, hold, out. He checks the space where the cage was and finds it empty of everything it held and his own and only his own for the first time in 2 lives. It's gone, he says. I know, she says. The circle confirmed when it closed. Nagini, the secondary pulse confirmed at 11:52. All 7, she says. They sit in the grass beside the Riddle family enclosure in the dark. Pettigrew makes a small sound. Neither of them looks at him. He will be transported to the ministry in the morning through a mechanism Hermione has already arranged through Ragnar's office, and he will spend the rest of his life in Azkaban, and this requires no further attention tonight. Harry puts his wand in his pocket. He looks at the graveyard, the dark grass, the old stones, the Riddle family marker with its 3 names, the cauldron, cold now, the night air moving through the yew trees at the boundary. At the moment of his death, fully powered in the body he built for himself at the height of what he had made himself into, the last coherent understanding in Tom Marvolo Riddle's mind was this: he was not defeated by superior patience. He was treated not as a catastrophe to be survived, but as a logistical problem to be managed. Across 8 years of childhood, by two children who never once regarded him as the center of the story. He was not fought, he was administered. He was not feared, he was found manageable. This is the sentence Voldemort dies thinking, that he was not defeated by a hero. He was defeated by a bureaucrat with a wand who found him manageable. Harry stands up. He extends a hand to Hermione. She takes it, stands. "Ready?" she says. "Yes," he says. They walk out of the graveyard, the bats wheel overhead, indifferent. The distant road carries one set of headlights south. The dark holds what it holds, which is everything and nothing, which is what darkness always holds, which is fine. It is over. The Ministry of Magic's investigation concludes on the 1st of July. The official finding, an unregistered magical event in Little Hangleton, consistent with residual dark energy discharge from the original defeat of He Who Must Not Be Named in 1981. No living suspects identified, no further action recommended. The file is closed and shelved in a basement archive where it will sit undisturbed for the rest of the century, categorized as a footnote to something that already happened. Lucius Malfoy spends the first week of July on the telephone with 3 different wizarding barristers. The Death Eaters who remain, scattered, defunded, politically isolated by 18 months of quiet structural dismantling, dissolve without a center to orient around. They do not announce this. They simply stop. The world does not know what happened in a graveyard on the night of June 24th. The world knows only that Voldemort is not coming back, which it has believed since 1981, which is now simply true in a way it was not before. The world continues. It is very good at this. Harry's first unplanned afternoon is a Thursday. He is on the street near King's Cross because Hermione's parents have a dentist's practice nearby, and he has been visiting since he was 7, and the street is familiar in the way of places that have nothing to do with anything operational, which is the kind of familiar that is new. He finds a chip shop, he buys chips, he sits on a bench outside and eats them and watches the street. It takes him 20 minutes to stop cataloging. The man by the crossing, not a threat. The woman with the pram, not a cover. The 2 teenagers arguing outside the newsagent, not a signal. He keeps doing it, and he keeps catching himself doing it. And eventually, somewhere in the middle of the second bag of chips, he has bought 2 bags, one for each hand. The way he has always bought 2 of anything, the cataloging simply runs out. There is nothing left to categorize. The street is a street. The pigeons are pigeons. The summer afternoon is going about its ordinary business entirely without his involvement, and it is not asking for any. He sits in the middle of it and breathes. It feels like surfacing from very cold water. Not painful, not even dramatic, just the long way up and then air, and then the world, warm and indifferent and full of people who have never heard of Tom Marvolo Riddle and are having a Thursday. He puts the second bag of chips on the bench beside him. Hermione arrives 12 minutes later, slightly flushed from having walked quickly, and sits down and picks up the second bag without comment because she has always known it was for her. He has always brought both. They watch the pigeons. Neither of them says anything for a long time, and the long time is not uncomfortable. It is, in fact, the best afternoon either of them has had in 2 lives. Hermione cries twice in July. The first time is in a bookshop on Charing Cross Road, the Muggle one, not the one behind the leaky cauldron, when she picks up the Hogwarts third-year curriculum list and reads Arithmancy, Introduction to Magical Mathematics and Predictive Theory, and understands for the first time that she can take this course because she wants to, not because it provides a framework for word calculations, not because arithmetic theory underpins the fiend-fire calibration she spent 6 months perfecting, because she is 13 and she loves numbers and the way they map onto magic, and she can now simply want that. She stands in the bookshop for 90 seconds before she notices. The second time is 3 days later, writing a letter to her parents. She gets 4 sentences in before she realizes that none of them are cover. I went to a good dinner with Harry and Sirius on Saturday. The soup was very good. I think I want to try horseback riding next summer. 4 sentences that go nowhere and don't need to, that carry no operational content, that are just what happened and what she is thinking of. She finishes the letter, she folds it. She cries briefly and without apology, in the specific way of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has just set it down and discovered what their arms feel like without it. Then she posts the letter. They tell Ron at the Burrow, the second week of July, in the garden after lunch while Fred and George are attempting something inadvisable with a garden gnome in the far field. They tell him that they have known each other since they were 5, that they had a reason. that the reason is finished now, and they are sorry they didn't tell him sooner, and they mean both parts of that equally. Ron is angry for 20 minutes. The narration declines to reproduce the specific vocabulary he uses, partly out of respect for Mrs. Weasley, who is 30 feet away through an open window, and partly because the vocabulary is, architecturally speaking, impressive enough that reproducing it would require a separate document. Then he stops, he looks at both of them, at Harry, at Hermione, at the two people who have been his friends for nearly 2 years, and who have apparently been running a war since before they started school. And he says, in the register of someone who has completed the anger and arrived at the thing underneath it, which has always been there, right. So what's next then? Hermione smiles. Harry will remember this smile for a long time, not because it is unusual, but because of precisely when it arrives, and what it costs her and what it gives away about how much she has wanted to say the next sentence. Nothing, she says. Nothing is next. We've done it. Ron looks between them. He looks at the garden. He looks at the gnome situation in the far field, which Fred and George have escalated significantly. So we just go to school, he says. We just go to school, Harry says. A long silence. Huh, Ron says. He goes inside to find something to eat. Through the window, they can hear him asking Mrs. Weasley if there are any biscuits. Dumbledore's office is exactly as it has always been. Fawkes is on his perch, the instruments turn. The portraits of previous headmasters pretend to be asleep with their usual unconvincing dedication. Dumbledore pours tea. He hands a cup to Harry. He pours a second cup. He sits down behind his desk with the ease of a very old man who has decided that whatever comes next does not require him to maintain any particular posture. I suspected, he says, from September 1st. Harry wraps both hands around the cup, the sorting hat. The sorting hat, and then, smaller things, the way you and Miss Granger move in a room. The way neither of you has ever been surprised by anything. He looks at Harry over his spectacles. I spent rather a long time trying to determine what I should do about it. What did you decide? Nothing, Dumbledore says. I decided to do nothing, which is not a decision I make easily or often. A pause. I had a plan, Harry. You know the shape of it. What you did, the way you did it, means it was never needed. Harry drinks his tea. I'm glad Dumbledore says simply, I carried that plan for 12 years. I am very glad to put it down. They sit in the specific silence of two people who have each been to war and have each, separately and at great cost, come out the other side. One of them is very old. One of them is 12, almost 13. The mathematics of this do not quite work in any ordinary register, and they both know it, and neither of them mentions it, and this too is a kind of understanding. Harry finishes his tea. Thank you for not interfering, he says, when you suspected, for letting us do it our way. I am learning, he says, that some things are better trusted than managed. He adds the hat's 4 words, be careful, Hogwarts, to his private journals that evening, with a single note beneath them. It was right. 3 weeks after the graveyard, a letter arrives at Hogwarts. It is addressed to H. Potter and H. Granger in handwriting that no human hand produced, and it comes without an owl, which the owlery finds professionally offensive and is still discussing when Harry opens it. It is from the Sorting Hat. The Sorting Hat has been sorting students for nearly 1,000 years. It has, across all of those centuries, never initiated correspondence. The letter is exactly what this implies. Unprecedented. Unrepeatable. The kind of thing that happens once, if at all, and only when the circumstances are specific enough to require it. It contains 4 words. Well done. Sleep now. Harry reads it twice. He walks to Hermione's dormitory corridor, which is as far as he can go, and waits for her to come down to the common room, and hands it to her without speaking. She reads it. She hands it back. She does not say anything, and he does not say anything, and neither of them will discuss it with each other. Not today and not in the 5 years that follow, because some things do not need discussing. Some things are simply, quietly, finally, true. Harry goes upstairs. He opens his trunk. He pins the letter to the inside of the lid, where he will see it every morning when he opens it, for the next 5 years without ever explaining it to anyone. Well done. 8 years of preparation, in 2 lives and 1 body, and a war that is over before anyone old enough to fight in it properly has left school. Sleep now. He closes the trunk. He sleeps.